1776. As one empire fell, another was born. Not from territory. Not from armies. From systems. Deep beneath the earth, the eye. It has been open for centuries. You have lived your entire life above it. The eye does not blink. It does not sleep. It has been watching since before you were born. Since before your parents were born. Since before this nation existed. Phase 1. Infiltration. Watch the ley lines activate. These are not mystical, they are ownership chains, revolving doors, policy networks. The eye touches every institution above through channels that appear to be coincidence. The bank. It is always the bank first. In 1910, 7 men representing 1/4 of the world's wealth met in secret on Jekyll Island. 3 years later, the Federal Reserve Act was signed. The ruler that measures all wealth was now privately held. Watch the ley line pulse between the eye and the vault. Every interest rate. Every boom. Every bust, authorized from below. The broadcast tower lights up. Operation Mockingbird, 1948. Intelligence assets embedded in every major news organization. They did not need to own every journalist. They only needed to decide which stories would never be told. 6 corporations now control 90% of what the English-speaking world reads, watches, and hears. They only needed to decide which truths would never be reported, which voices would never find a microphone, which investigations would quietly end. The silence is the product. The silence is the point. Parliament. An election every few years, to decide which face sits above the same infrastructure. When you understand that both candidates in every major election are funded by the same institutional investors, you understand why structural change never arrives through voting. The game is not rigged. The game is the rig. Three domains active. Already the figures nearest them are changing color. They don't feel different. They have not been threatened. They have simply been managed. If you control the information architecture, what people see, what they hear, what they are allowed to say, you never need force. The population does the work for you. The technology nexus. DARPA built the Internet. Google's seed funding came from In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture arm. In 2013, Snowden confirmed what had been whispered for a decade: every digital communication on the planet is being captured and stored. The technology companies are not surveilling you for advertisers. The advertisers are the cover story. For domains now: finance, media, government, technology. Every color on that wall has a thread running underground to the same source. The figures closest to each building have already begun to change. They did not notice. The process is designed to be invisible from the inside. The Pharmaceutical Institute, the largest lobbying force in every Western government. They fund the medical schools that train doctors, the journals that publish research, and the regulators who are supposed to oversee them. Their business model is not cures. Cures end revenue streams. Their business model is treatment. Managed. Chronic. Profitable. Indefinitely. The fortress. Eisenhower named the military-industrial complex the day before he left power, the one moment a sitting president could tell the truth without consequence. Private defense contractors now design the weapons, fund the think tanks that recommend wars, and employ the generals who retire from the Pentagon. War is not a failure of diplomacy. War is a revenue model. Six institutions active. 6 ley lines burning between the eye and the surface. The population above them does not know the lines exist. They see banks, towers, parliaments. They do not see the single point of origin below. Phase 2 begins now. Phase 2. The satellites go up. Over 4,000 of them orbit the Earth by 2024. The Echelon program, confirmed in 1988, systematically intercepts every electronic communication on the planet. There are no more blind spots. There are no more private conversations. The question was never whether they were watching, the question is what they plan to do with it. For 1,000 satellites orbiting above you now. Every call, every message, every search, captured and stored. Not because you are suspected of anything. Because you are not, yet. The archive is for when you become inconvenient. Now watch the surface. The domains begin coordinating. Watch the network lines multiply, not through secret meetings alone, though those happen, but through synchronized policy, shared board members, and the revolving door of personnel between industry and regulation. The same people move between pharmaceutical companies, the FDA, and the congressional committees that are supposed to oversee them. The architecture connects every sector. It does this in plain sight. Not through secret meetings alone, though those happen, but through shared board members, aligned institutional incentives, and synchronized policy. The network does not need to communicate explicitly. It communicates through structure. Through whose career advances and whose does not. Through which bills get funded and which die in committee. The Education Ministry. The curriculum does not teach children what to think, it teaches them what to think within. The boundaries of acceptable thought are laid down in childhood, and most people spend their entire lives never approaching those walls, never knowing they are there. The Intelligence Hub. By this phase, the network knows the contents of every conversation, every search, every transaction. Dissent can be identified, tracked, and neutralized before it becomes organized. Not by elimination, by making dissenters feel alone, monitored, and irrational. Beneath all of it, the council convenes. 13 seats in a circle. Not elected. Not accountable. Not visible in any public record. Their decisions will surface months later as legislation in parliaments that claim independence, as central bank policy, as shifts in cultural programming. The hand that writes the order and the hand that signs it are never in the same room. No public record. No accountability. No chain of command visible to any parliament or court. And yet, every government on earth eventually executes their directives. The politicians who implement these decisions will never know who issued them. The think tanks that recommend the policies will not name their true authors. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is institutional design. The council adjourns. Its work for this century is nearly complete. No record will be kept. No minutes published. No names attached to what was decided here. By the time the consequences surface, they will be called history. Phase 3. The architecture no longer needs active management. The education system rewards compliance and pathologizes independent thought. The pharmaceutical industry ensures that those who cannot be convinced can be sedated. The culture industry manufactures the identities people choose to wear. The population has been engineered to maintain its own captivity and to defend it aggressively against anyone who questions it. Watch the population now. Most are red. They were not forced. They chose comfort, and comfort has no exit clause. The figures who are still blue are increasingly isolated, visible, outnumbered, and surrounded by people who have been told that their questions are dangerous. Look at the march. Synchronized. They do not know they are marching. They think they are right. This is the final achievement of indoctrination, not obedience, but genuine belief. The compliant majority does not serve the system. They are the system. They enforce it on each other, voluntarily, for free. Watch the control meter climb. every domain compliant. The figures move in lockstep. The eye below has never been this open, this connected, this patient. And now, the system's favorite tool. A crisis. A crisis erupts. Watch how quickly emergency powers appear. Surveillance is expanded. Freedoms are suspended, temporarily, they always say. The pattern is identical in 1933, in 2001, and in 2020. Each crisis is a ratchet. It only turns one way. No emergency power, once granted, has ever been fully returned. Temporarily, they always say. They have always said temporarily. In 1933 it was temporary. In 2001 it was temporary. In 2020 it was temporary. The word is not a promise. The word is anesthetic. And it has always worked. Watch the red figures respond. They do not defend the system. They genuinely believe it is correct. This is the masterwork of indoctrination, when the conditioned defend their conditioning with real passion, real anger, real conviction. You cannot reach someone who believes their cage is freedom. But there is something the system cannot fully model. Resistance. Not organized resistance, spontaneous, local, ungovernable. It emerges where the weight of control becomes too heavy, and it always comes from the most controlled place, the bank. The bank catches fire. Watch the ley line go dark. The control level collapses in this domain. For this one moment, just this one, the invisible hand is briefly, visibly, on fire. The ley line goes cold. The control meter collapses. And the people nearest the fire feel something they were not supposed to feel again. Not anger. Not ideology. Something older than both of those. The physical memory of being ungoverned. Spreading person to person like warmth. Look at the figures near the fire. They remember what freedom felt like. See how they move towards it, not away. This is what the system spends all its energy preventing, not revolution, but this, the embodied memory of being free, spreading person to person like a flame. And now watch the network respond. Patient. Methodical. It has survived every revolt in its 400-year history. It does not need to suppress the rebellion by force. It simply needs to wait. To let the population absorb the shock and retreat into the familiarity of the system it knows. The compliant majority turns against the rebels. Not because they are paid to. Not because they are instructed to. Because they are frightened of the uncertainty, of the chaos, of the void that would be left if what they have been told all their lives turned out to be untrue. Their hostility is not malice. It is terror. The rebuild begins. Stronger walls. Better surveillance. The revolt will be written into history as proof that resistance is futile. The lesson delivered to the next generation: things cannot be different. Things have always been this way. Things will always be this way. And most will believe it. Phase 4. Total dominion. Every institution captured. Every domain compliant. The sky darkens. The moon turns red. This is the endgame the network has been engineering across 400 years, a world so thoroughly managed that most people inside it cannot conceive of an alternative. The cage has been rendered invisible. That is the achievement. The architecture only holds because the population has not yet decided, together, simultaneously, to withdraw its cooperation. That withdrawal would take nothing more than awareness and agreement. It has never happened. But it is the one scenario the model cannot survive. The one variable it cannot predict or contain. The network cannot surveil the inside of a mind that has decided to see clearly. That is not a metaphor. There is no algorithm, no satellite, no informant network that can intercept the moment a person simply decides, "I will not pretend anymore." That moment is sovereign. It always has been. The mind is the last place the invisible hand cannot reach. Not because it lacks the ambition. Because consciousness, when clear, is the one thing that cannot be owned. That is where this ends. And where everything else must begin. Watch the eye. It surveys everything it can reach. It cannot see inside a single human mind. That space is still yours. The invisible hand, for all its patience, all its architecture, all its centuries of effort, has never found a way in without your permission. And it never will. The simulation will now reset. But the pattern never changes unless enough people decide that it should. And that decision begins not with a revolution, not with a vote, not with a protest. It begins with a question. 3 words. The most dangerous 3 words in any controlled society. Who benefits? Ask it of everything you are told. Ask it of every law, every war, every crisis, every cure, every institution, every election. 3 words. That is the entire education this simulation has been trying to give you. Ask it without permission. That is all this has ever been about.